now we may call ourselves the United States of America, but a steadfast and unwavering sense of veneration and devotion to the Confederacy continues to prevail around the country, especially in the South, and especially among white people. We see this preservation of white supremacy through symbols like the Confederate flag and monuments built to honor the notorious figures idolized for their role in a war that was fueled by greed and racism. According to the Southern Poverty Law Center, more than 2,100 memorials and statues around the U.S. valorize the Confederacy or its figures in some way. And that includes government buildings, schools, parks, military property, and more, all being paid for by your tax dollars. But why does this undying love for the Confederacy still dominate our public spaces more than 150 years after the Civil War? And how does this hinder the quest for racial justice in America? I have with me Dr. Karen Cox to give us some perspective on this. She is a professor of history at the University of North Carolina at Charlotte and the author of No Common Ground, Confederate Monuments and the Ongoing Fight for Racial Justice. Karen, thank you so much for being here on Amplified tonight. You are the go-to person when it comes to all things about the Confederacy. So let's start with a brief history lesson. When exactly did these monuments start popping up, and why were they even erected in the first place?
Well, there's different phases of monument building that occur, and one of which is in the period immediately after the Civil War. And those first monuments went into cemeteries, which seems an appropriate place to honor Confederate dead. But 30 years later, beginning in the 1890s and through the First World War, which is really the era of Jim Crow, that early Jim Crow period, the vast majority of Confederate monuments were built then. And at that point, it's less about honoring the dead and more about a cultural statement, most often on the lawns of courthouses, that signals to Black Southerners they're second-class citizens. And so that's when most of them go up. You have another little uptick during the early 1960s, during the period of civil rights. And I think people would be surprised to learn that since 2000, 35 new Confederate monuments have been erected.
Well, and that is completely jaw-dropping. Since 2000, there have been all these new monuments. Now, I got to just, I'm going to be a bit inflammatory about this whole situation. And I got to say, I come from the South, so this is really kind of cuts into my bones as I think about my family that literally built this country and built the South and now have these nasty monuments all around. I got to say, in any other instance, and correct me, please, if I'm wrong, in any other instance where there's a war, you have winners and losers, generally, right? And it is odd and bizarre to me that the losers of a war still get to raise their flag without retribution. And I'm just curious if there's any context to that and how here we are. I mean, I'm thinking about everywhere we fought. We would certainly not allow, the Nazis to raise their flag with pride and be like, right? So how did this happen even? That we've kind of bent the rules a bit here?
Well, it began almost immediately. There was this narrative that emerges immediately after the Civil War known as the Lost Cause, which is basically white Southerners' mythological narrative about what the war was about. It denies that the war was about slavery. It venerates, heroes like Robert E. Lee, Stonewall Jackson, and the like. And it was just basically spoon-fed to generation after generation. Well, what happens is, probably at least, only about 20 years after the war had ended, you began to see efforts at reconciliation between North and South. And so the white North essentially turned a blind eye to what was going on in the South, around race, of course, but also about these monuments. And you'll find in some cases there are lots of actually Northern veterans from the United States Army who are there for the unveiling of these Confederate monuments. So it happens with the complicity of the white North. And No one's questioning it really. And yeah.
So I actually want to talk about some of about the myths, the lost cause myths that you speak of, and how they inflate propaganda surrounding this love that Confederate supporters have for these memorials. I think I have a screen here that lists out some of those the lost cause myths. Maybe I do, maybe I don't. But I don't want to lose sight of this, because not only did you have a bunch of people who lost, let's just fundamentally lost a war, right? And who ultimately were merged into the Union. And to me, it seems a bit treasonous to then still have this rebel idea. I mean, even using the language of rebel is a way of glamorizing and glorifying the loss, right, in and of itself. And so, you know, I wonder that, is there any kind of history to the people, the persons, the ideas in the campaign that was run, which, as I think about it now, feels a lot like a PR campaign to sanitize and retell the tales and heroize all the Confederate soldiers?
Yeah, so really, honestly, you begin to to see it emerge in the late 19th century, beginning in the 1890s, when this group known as the United Daughters of the Confederacy was formed in 1894, and that was the group was really behind monitoring school textbooks, for example, to make sure that children were learning what they would call the correct version of history that's very much a pro-South, pro-Confederate history. And so that begins, you know, really you begin to see this emerge in the early 20th century, and then it is perpetuated generation after generation. And so those ideas that you talk about, it simply just rewrites history and whitewashes history.
You actually wrote a book about this group. Tell us more about the United Daughters of the Confederacy and the role that those white women actually played in getting these monuments erected.
Yeah, so they are, this is an organization that was formed in 1894. It grew to, at its peak, about 100,000 women by World War I. And you can follow the rise of monument building by following the rise of the UDC. And so they are the group of women, white women, that are responsible for the vast majority of Confederate monuments that are on the landscape. They are generally connected in some way through blood or marriage to men of power in the region. And essentially, they share the same ideas and ideals about the Confederacy, about white supremacy, about these symbols. And the way I like to describe it is that whatever, you know, the kinds of legal segregation that was being put into place in the early 20th century, and that preservation of white supremacy legally is being supported culturally by these women in the United Daughters of the Confederacy.
Yeah, thank you so much for illuminating this, and I hope everybody gets a chance to check out your book. We talk a lot about the politics of our country on the show and wonder why white women so often vote against their own interest. And when I hear you talk about the history here of the Daughters of the Confederacy, it just reminds me of now, and I think about Virginia's last election outcomes. But anyway, people who oppose removing these statues or changing the names of buildings often view it as a personal attack on their culture and their history, rather than public displays of hatred and white supremacy that they are. Can you give us some perspective about the generational impact that Confederate iconography had in terrorizing the Black community for nearly 2 centuries?
Yeah, so, you know, I think there's a myth, this is another myth that sort of emerged and is actually circulates now, that somehow that the only time anyone ever protested Confederate monuments was only began with Black Lives Matter. It's just not true. African Americans, leading national figures like Frederick Douglass and W.E.B. Du Bois criticized monuments, but it was Black Southerners who had these things in their communities who really began speaking up. You have the editor of the Richmond Examiner, a Black newspaper in Richmond, who was railed against this kind of stuff. And then you begin to see protests. You know, again, you have to think about this. This is the Jim Crow period, so you couldn't physically protest because you'd risk being lynched in the South. And so what you see, though, emerge is that in the papers, like in the Chicago Defender, for example, this is where Black Southerners would really be very, very specific and clear about their feelings about these monuments. And it was funny when you referred to them as treasonous. I thought, this sounds like something from the Chicago Defender in the 1930s, because Black Americans were saying that. They said it, and they said it loud and clear. And so there's been
and often with consequence too. And
well,
they were
had to be
attacked.
careful.
So many of these newspaper places were, targeted. I think about in North Carolina, targeted and burned down. Right? You start writing too many truths or attacking white people too hard, and there's consequence for that.
There absolutely is, and that's why, so Black Southerners might want to critique these monuments that are in their community, that what they would do it through the paper, through the Chicago Defender, which is a northern newspaper. So, and they might do it anonymously, because you never know who's going to pick up that paper and read it, and that may put them in danger. But there were, certainly there were protests in the civil rights era. And it's been an ongoing thing. So the narrative that this is a recent phenomenon, that protests against Confederate monuments just began in the last 6 or 8 years, is just not true. It's been ongoing since the end of the Civil War.
Dr. Karen Cox, I need to take a quick break, but please stay with me, because when we come back, I want to talk about your new book and where we go from here. That's going to be next on Amplified, right here on BNC. Keep it right here. I'll be back. Welcome back. Before the break, we spoke about the history behind Confederate iconography in the U.S. But now it's time to ask the question, how do we remove the ills of a history that was told from an oppressor's perspective initially? Dr. Karen Cox is still here to help unpack that question. Thank you so much for staying. Your new book, No Common Ground, Confederate Monuments and the Ongoing Fight for Racial Justice, is out now. Please give us a brief synopsis about what your book seeks to reveal.
Sure. I just wanted to give the long history of Confederate monuments, beginning from the end of the Civil War up through the protests during the summer of 2020 following George Floyd's murder. And I also wanted people to understand that protest against these statues has been ongoing for a long time. And no common ground basically just refers to the fact that there appears to be, and I think there is, no common ground over what these statues represent.
Right on the cover is a picture of the late George Floyd and the Black Lives Matter symbol painted over a statue of white supremacist heartthrob Robert E. Lee. There are quite a lot of people who think that this racial reckoning to counter the Confederacy is, happening now and actually mirror those of the past.
Yeah, well,
movements criticizing and trying to remove these monuments have been around since the late 1800s. So none of this stuff is new. If you could you actually walk us through the historical context behind the controversy that existed, not only when these statues started to go up, but in the decades following?
Yeah, so it seems as though, that they went without any kind of criticism, but Frederick Douglass called these Confederate monuments, monuments of folly. And then W.E.B. Du Bois later said, after touring the South, that the better inscription on these statues should be, that these things honor men who've sought to perpetuate human slavery. But it is Black Southerners who are often the most severe critics of these things, and it's happened, as I said, from the early Jim Crow period through the period of civil rights, and up into most recent protests that have been going on really since the Charleston massacre in 2015. That's really when the most modern protest against these statues began.
I got to ask you, Karen, you see, and I don't know how you identify, but from optics, you look like you may be a white woman who is having a conversation about how white people don't aren't the ones who have been historically the most vocal in talking about the perils of, having these monuments up. And I wonder, in your research, as you have been yourself researching and then talking to others about this, what are you hearing and learning about why maybe there aren't the abolitionists who have been the ones yelling and having an outcry about these monuments? Where are all the white voices here, and what's silencing them?
Well, I think that there are white voices here. I'm a white Southerner. I'm definitely the loudest, I think, sometimes, but not always. There are I think what's happened is that, first of all, Black Southerners, as I said, have been protesting these things, have been vocal about Confederate monuments ever since they were erected. And what you've seen in the last few years, following the Charleston massacre, the Charlottesville rally, and the George Floyd murder, is that there's been more of a plurality of Southerners protesting these Confederate monuments. And so they're there. I think a new generation is beginning to speak up, but those who have grown up with these monuments and have only learned one narrative tend to feel sympathetic toward these monuments. So it's been my goal to educate them about that history and to understand that it has caused pain, and it has been a detriment to Black progress in the South from the very beginning.
I wonder, because I know I'm not necessarily the perfect messenger for this in trying to have conversations with white Southerners as someone who comes from Black Southerners about the feelings and the emotions that these erect, because there are feelings and emotions around legacy and history that are, about people's ancestry and family too. And so I wonder, as you are trying to educate, what might be some of the messages that resonate as you are trying to truth tell, that don't offend and necessarily erase people's own history and their ancestors, but get them to see that maybe they didn't do things that were right and dignified?
Well, I try to meet them sometimes where they are, and just first of all, say I'm a Southerner who has a Confederate ancestor, but that doesn't mean that I embrace that individual or embrace the history that they represent. And so I'm also, I think, I really am interested in bringing people together to have conversations. I think so often that what we do is shout at each other or take pot shots anonymously through social media, and I'm trying to avoid that. But the thing for me is to be honest and be truthful. I'm a historian. I work with facts. I work with research, and I try to share that with people and not flinch from it. Just because you don't have, I think there are this sense that people feel like, well, they have to be ashamed. They can be ashamed of the history a little bit. I don't think there's any trouble in doing that, because the truth of the matter is the history of this country is based in slavery and racial violence, and and this ongoing fight for racial justice. And so for me, the best way I can teach this is just to bring the documents out, because you cannot deny what they wrote and said and published. And if you're confronted with that, at the very least, you should maybe have a second thought about what these statues have meant to white people in the South, all these decades.
It's amazing when you look at history, the things that this country has shamelessly documented and just not cared that there were going to be people to read it later. There are still thousands of memorials across the country, most of which are populated across the South in states like Alabama and Kentucky and North and South Carolina, which is where my people are from. And I must admit that some baby steps have been taken to correct things. Nearly 170 structures were removed from public spaces or renamed in 2020. To counter that, however, some states have what are called, quote unquote, heritage protection laws that can prevent the removal of such structures. How do these laws undermine racial progress?
Well, it's really simple for me. It's when these laws are being passed in legislatures that are elected because of gerrymandering. And so they do not represent the full majority of their states. And so what happens is that because they're in power in a situation, and because they're also passing voter suppression laws, what this means is that individuals and communities who want to change the law, who want to be able to remove a monument, are not going to be able to do so, but they can't do so because their voting rights have been suppressed, and they can't elect the people who would make those changes. And so we're kind of,
it always comes back down to the politics.
Yeah, it absolutely does. And that we've had any removals at all has been amazing. Most of those have been in Virginia, but the reason that's happened is because the law changed in Virginia in the summer of 2020 that provided for that. But what you see now is that in other states, they've doubled down on their laws, put more teeth in those laws. In the state of Florida, passed one and was signed into law that actually makes tearing down a monument a second class felony where they can go to prison for 15 years. So it's making it very, very difficult for people of goodwill to do the right things for their communities because of these laws.
So are we heading in the right direction here by eliminating these reminders of hatred and white supremacy? Do you think that there's a place where they can be without them being destroyed, or does it make sense to just destroy them all? I wonder if we should have a museum of them.
Well, you couldn't have just one. That's the problem, because if you have, the truth of the matter is that most of these are local objects, and local communities have to be able to make their decisions about what to do. Here in Charlotte, where I live, we formed the mayor, who's a Black woman, and this makes this possible, formed a legacy commission, and the citizens on that commission passed some resolutions that then went before the city council. And this year we've actually had some street names changed because there was an effort. Now, monuments, we were lucky in that we don't have the monuments that are in some towns, but I do believe that when people come together, when local control is returned, that these things can be changed. I don't know that putting them in a museum improves things, because museums are often funded by your local tax dollars, and most people probably wouldn't want to see them in a museum either. So in some ways it's kicking the can down the road. Right now, those monuments that have been removed have been just placed in storage. The most likely place they'll end up will probably be in battlefield parks. It's really hard. I mean, some of these objects are enormous. And so where are you going to put them? And can you, you can put smaller things. You can put the battle flag in context inside a museum, but you can't put a 30-foot monument in there. It just can't. And so everything is going to be on a state-by-state, city-by-city basis, I'm afraid.
The book is called No Common Ground: Confederate Monuments and the Ongoing Fight for Racial Justice. Check it out, y'all. Dr. Karen Cox, thank you so much for joining me tonight on Amplified. This has been such an illuminating conversation.
Thank you so much.